we're not going to follow a rudimentary timeline with any of this. I'm not going to sit here and bore you with how I grew up and what I enjoyed to do as a kid and all the stuff in my youth. That will come out at some point in this show, but we're going to start this story in 2021. I was released from maximum security prison, Sousa Baranowski Correctional Center, in the Massachusetts Department of Corrections. That's where we're going to start this story in 2021. We're going to do the whole recap on my criminal history and all that jargon at some point. But what I want to do is we're gonna stay right at 2021. I would have been about 31 years old around this time. I got out of prison. It was approximately 8 years that I spent altogether. There was 2 sentences that were essentially forthwith aggregated, something like that, together. I had a low court case, domestic case, and then I was indicted on a shooting. And then, through the high court, the Superior Court in Massachusetts, they sent me to the Department of Corrections. I was immediately classified as a maximum security inmate, and there I rotted pretty much my whole entire time. Again, we're gonna recap all the lurid little details of my crimes, or whatever you want to call them, the situations that wound me up in prison. We're gonna go through each case with a fine-tooth comb. I'm not ashamed of anything I've ever done, so I don't mind saying it in its entirety. But let's start at 2021. I'm 31 years old. I get out of prison. Okay, I get out of prison. My mother was, so about a year before I had gotten out of prison, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. This was this was an absolute bombshell in my life. I don't really know how to explain it. I always took my mother for granted. She wasn't a drug abuser. She drank alcohol, not to excess, I would say. She was not an alcoholic, but she was never ill. My mother was never ill. There was a time that I was in prison, and prison politics were roaring, and I didn't think I was coming home. So something happened. This was around 5 or 6 years into my prison bid, something like that, where she had gotten sick. I found out about it, and I had to change the way that I handled situations, incarcerated, because I was going fast nowhere. You're in a maximum security prison environment. You have stabbings, you have riots, you got fights, multi-man fights, gang fights, knives, tattoos. You got drugs. It's just, the environment is so deplorable in specifically maximum security prisons. Anybody that has been in a maximum security prison understands that. I don't know what it is. I don't know if they're built on ancient Indian burial grounds or on a pet cemetery or something, but maximum security prisons especially are life draining. Okay, this is not a fun environment. This is a very dangerous environment. As soon as that cell door opens, anything is bound to happen. All right, so let's go with that. So my mother's sick. I'm attempting to make it out of prison, which seemed impossible. I was in multiple situations. I had to fight a DDU situation for a stabbing. There was a riot type situation that occurred, multiple fights, drugs. I was going nowhere fast. I realized that I had to do something in order to get out of there. This is approximately when the time I started, utilizing the mental health system in there, because I realized I was not going to get out of there. I wasn't going to get out of prison. So I make it out finally, and we'll get into, again, the finer details will come out in all this. I end up getting out of prison, and As soon as I come home to a very sick mother, not doing very well. You got to remember my background. I don't have, I didn't have any communications with my biological father. I know my maternal grandparents and my mother. So I come home. She is sick, and we can bring up some clips of that whole scene. But I'm not here for your sympathy or anything. This is purely informational. I come home to that. At some point soon after that, she ends up expiring. Okay. Now, what I want to get into right now is my personal life, my endeavors at the time when I had gotten out of prison, my mind state, even though my mother was dying, and that my life was bound to be much different than I knew it. My mind state, I was very motivated when I got out of prison. Okay, I attended proprietary schools. I graduated HVAC. I started working immediately with a mechanical demolition company. I had gotten certifications for oil burner. I started doing electrical stuff and so on and so forth. There's the GOAT. Gas, oil, air conditioning, tech support. I wanted to get into the HVAC business side of things, and I was very motivated to do that. My personal life at that time, obviously, you have your family is getting smaller. People are dying. People are getting older. People are finding their own lives, and so on and so forth. I wanted to obviously, I wanted to be a normal person. That's what I really wanted when I got out of prison, was to be a normal guy. I had moved, so I am originally, as we'll get into in this whole documentary here, I'm originally from the Cape. A lot of problems down there when I was a kid on the Cape. A lot of bullshit, a lot of pain, a lot of trauma down there on the Cape. So I knew when I came out of prison that I couldn't go back to Cape Cod. And I had moved to Worcester, Massachusetts, and I was very blessed in the area that I came to. My family had set me up. It's right on the cusp, kind of Holden, and it's a little Jewish neighborhood. Anyways, I came home to a real sweet situation. All right, I'm working my ass off. I'm getting training, and I try to open my own company. And at first I was so driven, it was out of control. I mean, like I said, I had this drive, even though everything was going on that was kind of, not good at the time to do well. Drugs and alcohol. I ate drinking beer, and maybe sometimes to the excess, but other than beer, when I came home, there was nothing. I didn't smoke cigarettes. I didn't do any drugs. There was nothing along those lines. It was work, try to get a life squared away for myself, and hopefully, try to, maybe one day get married, maybe one day have kids. There's a lot of things that you think about when you've spent so much time in prison that you start wanting after a while. You know what I mean? All those normal things that when I was a kid, was like, who cares? You start to think about that. So I came home with the intentions to create a life for myself. I ended up with a particular female, and we're gonna get into how I met her later on. But I met a particular female. When I met her, there was no intention of a long relationship. I did really enjoy her company for a little bit, but I did not intend to ever marry this girl or have kids with this girl or anything like that, which was a shame, because maybe I led her on. Shame on me. But I was lonely. I came out of prison. I was legitimately looking for friends, and I did find friendship in her for a little bit. Unfortunately, when I think she came to the realization that this was not going to be a forever thing, I think she started getting a little crazy. And at that point, she went off the deep end. She went to the police station and frankly made up a whole bunch of lies. And it's documented that she made up a bunch of lies. There was never any anything that came of anything that she said. But what did come after that was a whole hell of a lot of police harassment. So it's very important that you know that at some point in this whole documentary, we're going to get into the online dating, police informant stuff. And I'd rather not speculate at this point in the show because this is fact based. Everything that I want to tell you now, we are talking fact based. We're telling a story as best fit to the timeline as we possibly can. So I meet her. She goes off the rails. Soon after that, okay, I've struggled with females in my life. All right. Another thing that we will get into later. I've struggled with females in my life. I could never really put two and two together. I was like, this is bizarre. How does a guy have this much bad luck meeting females? Okay. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, but what I'm saying is that the situations that would transpire between me and some of these girls were just bizarre. And as you seen with the other show there, Crime Watch Daily, Chris Hansen's punk ass. But anyways, yeah, so I've always struggled with this, and I could never really put it together. I mean, these girls would always do wildly crazy things, and I said, it just can't, and the bitches be crazy thing didn't really fit. It just didn't fit because other people in my life, they didn't have the problems that I had. So, for years, especially maturing, you attempt to just kind of accept, maybe I am the common denominator here. Maybe I am the problem. Maybe it's me. All right. And for many years, I did a lot of work on myself when I was in prison, and I thought maybe it's me. Maybe it really is me. Well, I can tell you, and I can tell you affirmatively that is not the case. So that girl, after she kind of spun out on me, goes to the police, makes accusations about firearms that I never had, that they never found, that didn't exist, okay? She was the type of female that would have never left on her own. She would have never just ghosted me. It just wouldn't have happened, okay? This is the type of girl that even if there were infidelities or anything like that, she would have eventually, kept communication. So I met another girl around this time. Now, this is the part that I need everybody to pay attention to, because this is the hidden gem of how they get every single one of us back in jail. All right. Some variation of this. All right. I ended up meeting a girl. And the strange thing that I noticed, you got to remember that you have a long history here of me attempting to, kind of turn my life around and being self-aware and just trying to stay out of prison. Really, I'm really just paying attention. So I meet this other girl after this horrible breakup, and I start getting really strange vibes about this girl. You got to remember that there was a relocation that happened in my life from Cape Cod to the Worcester area, which I don't really know anybody. So when I came out here to the Worcester area, no one really should have known anything, too in depth about my life when I came out here to Worcester, other than what you may read or something like that. And essentially what ended up coming to be was, for whatever reason, whether it was she fell in love with me, whether it was that, she wasn't getting anything on her investigation and this is what she decided to do, I ended up finding out that girl was an informant, which made perfect sense. She admitted to me that she was an informant, and it made perfect sense because the other girl, like I had told you, would never have just kind of faded to black on her own without someone, maybe saying, listen, we're watching them, don't worry, we got this, or whatever the case may be behind the scenes. So I end up dating that girl for a period of time. And I think the messed up thing about it was I stayed with her because I knew that the other relationship was so volatile, and in my mind I says, well, at least she's saving me from this wacko chick who's going to the police and all this, And, by having this informant girl in my life, she's keeping the other one away. So I ended up staying with her. Obviously, I wasn't doing anything to really worry about. And when she admitted to me that she was a informant, it wasn't right away. It wasn't something that happened right away. She started asking me, certain things and doing certain things, particularly that that I was able to, in my own head, start questioning. So, at some point, she admits that she's an informant. I, however, don't play the situation off like you would think. I end up pretending more or less that I didn't hear her. So when she told me this, it was kind of like a proposal to make money off the state or whatever. And obviously, I'm not down with any of that informant rat shit. So I pretended like I didn't hear her, and I was like, oh, let's go outside, whatever. I just kind of acted like it didn't resonate. But really, I was in a state of shock in my own head. And at this point, I realized that I wasn't dealing with your average, crazy girlfriend. I was dealing with an arm of the law. And at this point, I decide to go and order a whole bunch of counter surveillance equipment and, do my, I call it my reverse investigation. And, sometimes I sit now and I wonder, well, should I have bothered? It's good that I know all this stuff that I know now that I'm trying to share with you, but I'm going to tell you what, it's a strain on my everyday life now, because I know how they work, I know how they operate, and I know what they do. And certain things that you think that that law enforcement, police, probation, certain things that you think, oh no, they would never do that. Yes, they are, and they're doing a whole hell of a lot more. So I realize she's an informant. I start my reverse investigation here, and at that point, I realized that she's also having sexual relations with one of the, state troopers, and, that she's got a whole other life that she lives. She's just literally pretend dating me. It was pretty wild. Again, I was on some whatever, I'm not doing anything wrong, type of thing. So let me fast forward a little bit here. She ends up going, she tells me it's a cruise. I know that she's going on a debriefing. A lot of these informant girls, they work hand in hand with an informant by proxy. So what I mean by that is an informant, because they're obviously having sexual relations with you, and the levels of bad shit that is, usually there's someone that they introduce you to who will be the informant by proxy. So like in this girl's case, it was her mother. They've been snitching for fucking God only knows how many years. And her and her mother would kind of do this. And I would imagine, and I don't have the file in front of me, I don't have the access card to the Massachusetts State Police Barracks, but I would imagine that she was the one that would give the information. So if a court case ever erupted from any of this, that it would be, they wouldn't get messy. Obviously, I'm not banging the mother. You know what I mean? Probably could have, but anyways, we'll leave that out. So I realize this girl's an informant. I realize how dirty this thing's gotten. And, there's a part of me that just says, you know what, whatever the case may be, even if it's just whatever, she's keeping that other girl away. And you know what, this is my time to shine. This is my time to more or less, show these people that, I'm not the devil himself and all this other nonsense that people have said. I said, let me show my ass here. So that's what I did. I had a 5 or 6 month long thing with this little informant girl, and I realized that they weren't interested in any of that. They weren't looking to see if if I was a good guy or a bad guy. They didn't really give a shit about any of that. Their main goal and focus and mission was to lock me up. So I got to kind of bookmark this, because there are many things that these informants and these little rat trollops do, by the direction of the police, to try to get you to make a mistake, and ultimately, that's how you end up finding yourself in handcuffs. I can guarantee you, all right, I'll guarantee this. I've been in prison, 80% of my natural life I have spent in DYS, residentials, prisons, things of that nature, right? And I'm pretty good at getting the backstory on everything. Prison politics usually play out, and you kind of have to go through all that type of stuff. So I want to tell you some of the things that these girls do, and to anybody that has done time before. All right, I want you to listen to me, because there might be a girl sitting next to you right now, and in your head you're like, oh Jesus. So one of the things that this girl first started doing that was extremely abnormal, all right, but it ended up happening time and time again. We'll go into all that, but is when they sent her in with the instructions to mess up my life. And when I say mess up my life, I mean that literally. So they would tell her not to clean up after herself, and don't do her own laundry, and you got to remember, this girl's basically staying here, you know what I mean? She's, if I was an absolute idiot, I would have thought she was my girlfriend. So that's the first thing they do. They try to throw you off of your game, because when guys get out of prison, they're very neat, they're very orderly, things are, have their place, and ultimately that's everybody, but guys that have spent a significant amount of time in prison, maybe you have the leg up in that department because of all the years of structure that you spent in jail. So that's the first thing they have these girls do. The other thing, and now we're just talking about one informant here, it ends up getting much worse than this, if you can believe that. But this was their first run with me, was her. She worked by day at a supermarket in the HR department, and by night, this was her job, I guess, sucking dick for the cops. It's kind of crazy, but that's how it works. So she's here, she's not doing her laundry, she's not doing this stuff, but I'm trying to just, they say, keep your enemies, close, or what's the saying go? It's, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. And that's essentially what I was trying to do. I says, what are they looking for? What are they doing? So I'm just trying to, gauge out the situation and see how long I can, realistically keep this thing going. So anyhow, she's not cleaning up after herself and whatever, but she's a very likable girl. Obviously they pick these girls for a reason, and she's a very likable girl, and obviously we're having crazy sex and all that nonsense. So one of the other things that she ended up doing, all right, and this is something that I really do not like, all right, this is wrong on so many different levels, but due to some of the prior allegations that I've had against me, all right, and again, we are going to get deep into that, because what this isn't the first time this has happened. That's what I realized as well. So this was the jarring thing that I kind of came to the realization of when all this had happened, was this wasn't the first time that they had sent an informant in my life. I always knew that something was going on, that something was wrong, all right? But I never thought that the government was this dirty. I never thought that they would send some girl out to, essentially be trafficked. You know what I mean? It's just not trafficked, but, to government pimping. You know what I mean? I didn't think it was a real thing. So long story short, I realized this, and one of the things they did, and this is really just bothers the shit out of me, is she would constantly try to have me rape her, All right, and you're probably like, what the, how do you do that? All right, obviously I'm not a rapist, so it didn't work, but this is what she would do. So like, for instance, you know, on one of the first nights that her and I met, um, one of the first nights that her and I met, you know, we went out to eat. You know, I asked her, I said, you know, you want to go somewhere after this, or what, you know, what are you trying to do? And she, you know, we left the restaurant or the bar or whatever, and I said, you know, you want to get in my car? Do you want to get in your car? What do you want to do? She, oh, we'll get in my car. So she's driving, and you know, she's just not acting right, man. Again, there's no drugs involved. There's nothing. I'm sitting there. I might have been drinking a beer, but other than that, there's no drugs involved. I'm very alert. I'm very aware of what's going on. Now she starts driving me down all these back roads. At this point, I says, I'm about to get clipped. So I'm looking in the back seat. You know what I mean? You know, she's just a little thing, so I know she's probably not going to do anything to me, but I'm starting to get nervous. So, you know, I tell her, I said, you know, on my way here, I'm not from here. I'm not from Worcester. I'm not from, I believe this was, you know, out towards like, you know, the Belchertown area, possibly. I don't even know where we went out the first time, but I'm not from here. I said, I don't know where do you guys go? I mean, is there a beach? Is there a pond? Do you want to go hang out? Do you want to, you know, what do you want to do? And I said, I think I saw like a pond or something. If you want to go hang out at the pond, you know, after the bar. And she was like, okay, yeah, you know what I mean? And we start driving, and she blows right past this pond. I'm like, what the hell? So anyways, after driving me through all these back roads and all this nonsense, I'm like, what the hell is going on here, right? So we end up, you know, circling back. We go to the pond, all right? When we pull down to this pond, there's a red van there. So now I know it was the state police. They were doing some type of weird sting operation or whatever the hell it was. But now I know it's the police. Then I didn't know what it was. I was like, are these hippies here? What's going on? So there was a red van parked at this pond, and it was pretty late out. It was like 11 o'clock. No one really should have been out there, but there was this red windowless van, and I looked through like the windshield, and I could see in the back that there was a glow, like a red glow in the back, almost like a hippie van or something, like a Scooby-Doo van. So I tell her, I said, you know, what is there, a bunch of hippies out there? Again, whatever, you know, she's, you know, yeah, maybe, whatever. So she pulls right next to it. I'm like, all right, whatever, a little weird, but it's okay. So here I go, you know, I'm, you know, trying to gauge this chick out, and I've been around for a long enough time where I know red light, green light, you know what I mean? I know if a chick's feeling it. I know what the fuck's going on. So long story short, you know, we start making out, this, that, the other thing, and then she freezes up on me. And I'm like, what the hell? So obviously I stop what I'm doing. I'm, you know, drinking my beer. I'm like trying to figure out, like, do you want to bring me back, or what's going on here? So long story short, you know, she like kind of attacks me again, you know, and not attacks me, but like, you know, starts, you know, kissing me and whatever. And you know, now we get a little further than we did the first time. You know, I'm obviously, she's sitting in a puddle. She's, you know, got a piercing down there, and obviously I know that she wants to do something, but I'm like, hey, maybe she thinks she doesn't want to be a whore or whatever. I have no idea. But we start hooking up again and get a little further, and then bang, again she stops. I'm like, something's wrong here, dude. I says, yeah, you can bring me back to my car. So I end up going back to my car, and I'm driving out of there, and I realized driving home, I said, something was wrong there. There's something wrong. Something happened there. I don't know what the hell it was, but something weird. Then soon after that, it was that she admitted that she was an informant. But there was multiple times that things like this used to happen, and what they were hoping on doing was to get me out of my character. And, you know, if I was some rapist or whatever, then, you know, I would have tried to get my rocks off. Obviously, it failed. I don't like that for so many reasons, man. First of all, you leave me with a raw case of blue balls. It's like, what the hell? Second of all, it's unnatural. All this shit, all this informant nonsense is very unnatural. I want everybody to pay attention. When something happens that is unnatural between you and a female, it's just not natural. Too many guys I see in arguments with females, and it's like, are you that stupid? Are you really that stupid? And what it really is no, they're not that stupid. They're trying to get you. They are purposely and maliciously trying to get you to make a mistake and get out of character and, catch a domestic or whatever it is. For years, I thought this was conspiracy. For years, I said there's no way, it's not happening like this. But sure as shit, it was. And when I started to, like I said, I ordered all that counter surveillance equipment. When I started listening and paying attention and so on and so forth, I realized that this actually happens. So you have that. Another thing that I really don't like that they did, okay, this almost much more than the they're pretty even, but this is a pretty messed up one too. Another thing that happened here is obviously they knew that I liked her and that she liked me or whatever. So one of the tactics that they used, and you got to remember initially that first girl said that I had firearms, and one of the things that they tried to do to get me to get these firearms that didn't exist was she came home from work one day and she ends up telling me that she got raped by an old guy at her job and this, that, the other thing. And essentially, without boring you with the dialogue, what she's trying to get me to do was go and shoot up a supermarket where because it was a coworker that she claimed raped her. So anyways, obviously, I realize what's going on, and I don't obviously go down and shoot up the supermarket like they wanted me to do. But you have to remember, I got into that trouble when I was a 19-year-old kid, and I did have a shooting, and I did shoot up a courthouse when I was 19 years old. That's why I was in prison. And if you could believe that these people were trying to get me to commit a similar act, it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing, all right? Because you got to think, if I was an absolute dummy and decided to go down there and do this, all right, it wouldn't have, none of this would have come out. This wouldn't have been the thing that came out. I would have been, front page on the paper, #1 terrorist. That's what would have happened. None of this would have come out. And through my experience through prison, living in that lifestyle, I know several instances where you only hear about the story on its face. My life is filled with it. There is a bunch of things that have happened to me that throughout my life that you're judged on its face. They don't pay attention to the backstory on how it happened, on why it happened, or any of that. They don't give a shit about that. They only care about what they can put you in jail for. So, you have her trying to get me to rape her. You have them trying to get me to go and commit essentially a terrorist act, which is just wild, man. That's wild. And I'm smart enough, obviously, to duck and dodge. So her time ends up running out. It was about a 5 or 6 month long thing that they sent this girl in for. And I end up, they realize they have not a goddamn thing on me. All right. And they end up coming, because I was on probation. Remember, it's very hard these days to get a straight sentence without probation after the fact. It's almost impossible out of the superior courts around my area. They never like to give you a straight sentence and, let you go off paper. So, long story short, I'm arrested. My probation's violated, even though the charges they arrest me for are just hogwash, absolute hogwash. They violate my probation. I spend about 5 months in jail. After I get out of jail, you think that, he figured it out once. They were not going to do this anymore. Well, in the next segment here, we're going to go on to what these, what these law enforcement police officers decided to do next. But I hope that some of this was enlightening, and I hope you'll watch the next segment of this.